Happy Valentine's Day to
Happy
you.
Valentine's Day. Thank you.
I dressed the part. I got the pink as
So
well.
beautiful. You're so pink. I love it. Perfect.
Well, thank you. I feel it was appropriate for the occasion because I know of what would be the perfect lucky gift for the
Yes,
Valentine on your shopping list.
that's right. My album is out today, and I'm like so excited. I mean, I've been working on this for such a long time. I'm so happy that it's finally out. And, it's just for me, it is a labor of love. So it's perfect that it's coming out today on Valentine's Day, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, labor of love, no pun intended. You said it's been in the process for a long time. This is your first album. American Myth was like 8 years ago,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
crazy. I remember you
yeah.
interviewing you when that one came out. So obviously you got a lot going on with, your film work, your comedy work. We had a pandemic in the middle of all that.
Right.
But I know how passionate you are about music. We've gone record shopping together and we've gabbed about music on camera and off for years. So I'm kind
Hmm.
of surprised it took you this long to follow up that album. So I
Yeah.
guess the obvious question is, besides all the other things I might have mentioned, like why 8 years?
I think, well, also some of the songs were songs that I didn't put on American Myth. So,
Uh,
like when I make records, I kind of what I do is I make a like sourdough starter, like I leave a little and then I let it grow. Like, so there's a couple of songs that I left a little and then let grow over the last several years. And so Funny Man is one
mm,
off of the album that I actually recorded in 2014, really to celebrate the life of Robin Williams. Also, it was a big song, a big staple that we would play out in the street for my Be Robin project, which was an outreach for people experiencing homelessness in San Francisco. And we'd have these big bands go out on the street and play in encampments. And the bands were like so epic because it was like some days we'd have Bob Mould and other days we'd have Boots Riley. I mean, we were really lucky. So Roger Rocha, who I wrote some of the album with, came out and he was the band leader, and we would steal electricity and we would just play to different homeless encampments, and people would get food and
mhm.
supplies, and it was really special. But it was to commemorate Robin Williams' work with Comic Relief from the 1980s, which was his big homeless charity. So I was happy to do that. So I'm glad that this song finally made it on the record.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is you said 2014, right?
That's right.
Was that the year that Robin Williams died?
Yes, yes,
I know there was an anniversary of that. It's crazy. It's been now more than 10 years.
yes.
Um, so obviously you've explained a little bit of the inspiration for that song, but
Mhm.
I assume you were friends with
Yes,
Robin and maybe saw a
yes.
different side of him because this is sort of about how like a funny person on the outside isn't always feeling on the inside, obviously.
They don't always feel it, but people being funny, it's often overlooked that being funny is a trauma response, because
Mm,
to laugh at something is to have overcome it, like it's a coping mechanism. And so people who have very advanced senses of humor oftentimes are coping with a lot of trauma, a lot of pain. And I think that's what he was dealing with. I don't know. I didn't know him as well. I knew him. I had two relationships with him. My one was personal, one was parasocial. So I knew him from afar as a fan, but I also met him several times. And he owned the comedy club that I lived across the street from when I was a teenager. And I would
oh wow.
run across the street, and he would do these shows, and I would have to perform after him for years. It was so
Wow.
torturous to follow Robin Williams as a comedian. So, he taught me a lot, but also he was just a special, really special person. And I think people don't talk about him very much because the legacy is hard to contend with the way that he passed. And
Yeah.
I find that it's uncomfortable for people because you sort of have to bring that up too. But I think it's sad because we shouldn't miss out on the fact that he was such a huge part of entertainment for such a long time. So I wanted to honor him. I love the song. It's for all funny guys who uh, never quite feel so funny on the inside. But I find like the end of the track, there's a little laugh track, and that was recorded last year when I was doing with one of my bands, the Red Room Orchestra. We were doing a show with Kyle MacLachlan, honoring all of the musical contributions of David Lynch in his
Oh,
filmography and
wow.
television history. And so the laugh comes from that show. So the song also in its own way honors David Lynch, who I consider one of the funny guys, who maybe was not so funny in a lot of ways too, but love
Very,
him.
very timely. Were you friends with David Lynch?
I never met him, but I
Uh,
am a huge fan, as I am Kyle MacLachlan. I mean, you
his
know,
Instagram is the best, by the way.
he's so
So good.
funny. I mean, he's a really silly person, which is really great. You want that in that sort of like that 90s leading man. He was like the ultimate leading man. And now he's just hilarious. And he also plays a number of instruments
I did not know that.
very
Did not
well as
know.
sings. So he's quite a quadruple threat. I don't know, many threats. He's the best.
Much like yourself, you are,
Yes.
and I have more questions about like the fact that maybe some people aren't super educated about the Masked Singer helped educate
Mhm.
people about the fact that you can sing well, but a lot of people don't necessarily know about your music career. And I do want to ask about that, but I want to follow up about the Funny Man song. You talked about like being funny, being on a lot of the time
Mhm.
is a trauma response, and I wonder if, without we don't have to get into whatever you want to get into is fine with me, but you've been open about traumatic things that have happened to you in the past.
Mhm.
um is that what comedy has been for you? Because people think of you as a funny gal, and you absolutely are. You're one of the great comics of all time, but you have a serious side to you as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that comics are actually much more serious than people realize, that most of the comics I know are very serious people. And it's uh it's about the fact that we are serious about like what comedy is. It's really about finding ways to let light in, finding ways to let hope in, finding ways to let joy in. And for me, that's what it's always been about. I think I've always had a sort of a depressive personality, of a sort of a difficult time coping with the world as it is. And you know, the fact that I have a sense of humor has really helped me. And I think sharing that, being a comedian, helps others as well.
Absolutely. Is that why you turned to comedy in the first place? I forget how young you were when, I mean, you grew up across the street from a comedy, from Robert Williams comedy club, but like when did you first, like what age were you when you first kind of got like did your first stand up?
My first sets were around 14,
Wow, that's
so really
gutsy.
young. But I always knew this is what I wanted to do. Like I just felt it. And I would have very vivid dreams as a child of being a comedian on stage, and they exactly feels like what it feels like now, which is so odd. But I knew that it was really like destiny, which is such a strange thing to think about, but that's really what it was. And so that the feeling of doing it makes me really feel like myself, and it makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing.
What was it about going on in your life at age 14? That is pretty young to start. I
Mhm.
mean, even most musicians aren't playing gigs at 14, some are, but I mean, I've always looked at comics and gone, that's the hardest job because you can't hide behind a wall of feedback or,
Mhm.
a guitar. Like, that's a very putting yourself out there kind of thing. Like 14, what made you want to do it so young?
Well, I had a lot of encouragement. I was in a class in school where our teacher would sign us up for open mics. And my first comedy partner I had was part of a duo when I started. It was with Sam Rockwell,
No
the
way.
Academy Award winning actor who dropped out of comedy, doesn't do it anymore, but
That's
he's doing
crazy.
all right. And there's phone footage of it on YouTube. You can see in our sketches when we're like literal children. I think we're a
Wow.
little older in that. I think we're probably 15, but still very, very young. Um, but yeah, he ended up moving to New York with his mom and leaving our school. And so I continued with it, beyond school and beyond doing sort of like sketches. I evolved into a stand-up comedian from there.
So you knew it was your calling to do stand-up comedy, but I know you grew up on the Go-Go's and you were and are a big music fanatic. Did you ever consider making music like your primary dream, goal, career? Because it's like you've always done it, but it's never seemingly been your main thing.
No, I never thought it about it in those ways. I guess because comedy was such an all-encompassing part of my life, and all of my friends are comedians. All of my social life involves comedy to some degree still. So, we all are a very tight community. So it was for me like an exciting vacation to go into music because it was so exotic and so different. And I love rock and roll. I've always been a part of like rock and roll shows forever. That to me is a culture that is so still very exciting, going to shows. There's nothing like it. It's so special. So I think that I started to pursue music for me became more around 2008 when I was collaborating with people like Fiona Apple and John Bryan and Andrew Bird and Tegan and Sarah and Grant Lee Phillips and Ben Lee, so many wonderful people around Cho Dependent, my first record.
Well, obviously you've released straight up comedy records as well, and you'll always be known for comedy, but probably, I mean, there's definitely humor in all your albums, including the one we're about to talk about, Lucky Gift. But people probably expect from a musical album from Margaret Cho that it's going to be a funny record, like, I don't know, like a Weird Al Yankovic record or a Dr. Demento style, like comedy music
Mm-hmm.
pastiche. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It's like legit, and the music comes first. Like I said, there's humor in the lyrics, but it's not a
Yeah,
like ha album.
yeah.
Um, do you get that reaction like when they hear any of these records and being like, oh, okay, this could be by, Juliana Hatfield or
Oh,
Tegan
I
and
love
Sarah,
that. Oh, I love
like that.
that.
Yeah, but like, are people surprised when they realize this isn't kind of like a lark, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that, once your sort of brand is comedy, then people have an assumption that's what you'll continue to do in every sort of aspect of your performance. But there's quite a lot of comedians that are um very legitimate musicians, whether that's Matt Berry, who's really musical genius, and Tim Heidecker,
Mhm.
who's so good, and Mae Martin, and of course Steve Martin, no
Yeah.
relation. Steve
His
Martin
stuff
is
is
like the
super
ultimate.
serious.
He's the most serious. He's the most like the most serious player and serious like the virtuosity, the musicianship. You can't believe that it's the same the jerk, like it's so wild. So I like being in the arena of comedians who do serious music.
I like that. I like that. You contain multitudes. So you mentioned
Yes.
the 90s in this
Mhm.
context of Kyle MacLachlan. I just mentioned Juliana Hatfield, but I know you like all types of music, but I know that decade's a sweet spot for you. And I
Yes.
do hear a lot of 90s power, like more like 90s power pop on this record, like Apples and Stereophones and Wayne type stuff.
Ooh.
Juliana Hatfield, later Liz Phair, like Whip
Yes.
Smart Liz Phair.
Yes. Yes.
Some, Veruca Salt. I mentioned Tegan and Sarah.
Yes.
They're not so much 90s, but like, is that like what you were drawing from? Am I hearing correctly?
Yes, you are. Thank you so much. Now, my goal was to be booked on the Lilith Fair. Like, if we could get in a time machine and then I could go back and somehow be transported, I would like to play a set in between Joan Osborne and Alanis Morissette. Like I love the 90s. And I think it was a really great time for guitar driven female voices, rock and roll that was like you're in a slip dress, but you're talking about feminism, like I love that juxtaposition.
I do too, and I was about to ask you because I agree it was such a good time for women. There was the Lilith Fair thing. There was also like Riot Girl stuff happening. There, you mentioned Fiona Apple, who you've worked with. There was a lot of like, everyone was like women in rock, and there was like also like a lot of like co-ed bands fronted by women, like No Doubt, Garbage, Hole. I mentioned Veruca Salt. Like, kind of an open question, but like what happened? Like for a while, it was like there was one year at the Grammys where like all of the album of the year nominees, I think it was the year that Lauryn Hill won, like all of the nominees were female.
Hmm.
The only men even nominated were like the Garbage guys.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, some we had a good year at the Grammys this year with, and
Hmm.
women are doing very well, but it's more in the like straight up pop thing.
Yeah.
Like what happened that like the tides turn, that like what felt like a lot of progress in the 90s with Alanis and and Joan Osborne and Sarah McLachlan and all these people it kind of stopped. I don't know.
You know what happened? New metal. I think it was, you know what turned? The Warp Tour. I think we could, there are some culprits. I think we could look to emo. Emo, I love emo,
Me too.
but very male driven. You know what I mean? Like we sort of went away and it got hyper masculine. And then there's nothing more masculine than new metal. It's like the umlaut is like a couple balls. Like it's so new metal. Like it's just so testosterone driven anchor. And I love new metal. You can't,
Yeah.
yeah, I really, I can't help it. But at the same time, there is such a sort of a maleness to it that does not lend itself to women's voices. I can't even think of a female new metal. The only maybe Evanescence, if even, but is
Yeah.
that?
But they had a really, yeah, I actually would say that was true, but they had a really like, wake me up. They had to put that on it, rapping dude. I didn't like new metal. I mean, musically, I could make some arguments for a couple of the bands, Deftones, who are sort of not
Yes,
totally purely in that genre. I just
right.
didn't like how like willfully unglamorous it was, whether it was
Yeah,
women or men. I like, my rock stars to like have this sort of like space alien glamour to them,
yeah,
and these guys were like just really like just bros in shorts and backwards caps, like drinking beer. New metal's
yeah.
coming back though, which might be in line with what's going on in the times we're in. I don't know.
The political sphere. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think, yeah, music always changes with the times, but there is something right now that's happening so much with women that is exciting. I love queer pop. Whether that is Doechii. I think of
Yeah.
Doechii as pop, even though of course she's hip hop, but to me it's very pop and it's very exciting. As with Chappell Roan, who's just phenomenal. So I'm excited about music. Like the Grammys it was a special year because it was all women who
Yeah.
were being applauded, and Kendrick, of
And Kendrick.
course, who's great.
Yeah.
But I was excited that women are sort of leading the charge for what we're listening to right now.
Do you feel that's going to continue, or can you speak to the importance of that? And, we're in some crazy times where women's
We need it.
voices are very needed.
We need it. We need it more than ever. I mean, we need it. We need queer voices more than
Yep.
ever. And I love that Chappell Roan's like, that is so queer to win and talk about health insurance, which is like so perfect. Like she's just perfect. I love her. And I think that's like, what we're kind of going for, like really progressive politics, but also really great music. And so I'm looking forward to what the future brings there.
The 90s were also a time for that, actually. There
Mhm.
was a lot of like, there was Choose or Lose, Rock for
Mhm.
Choice, there MTV was doing some actually like really legit like political coverage. Like
Mhm.
Bill Clinton was like doing a town hall. Like, yeah, it was an interesting time. So I do want to talk about track by track, or at least some of the tracks on this. And I have to lead with I think it's called 90s Sisyphus. Is
90
that
Sisyphus.
Yep,
Well,
gotta leave with that.
that is the song that's about breaking up with the guy that's Lucky Gift is about.
Mm.
I mean, it only took 5 tracks to break up, but we had a good run.
That's less than
And
a Tortured Poets department was, so you
that's
got that going for
true.
you.
That's true. So it's the flip side of the optimism of Lucky Gift, where you're like, in this love affair, you're in a band, you're playing Nebworth, and you get in a huge argument, and you're going to break up in between the buses. So that's kind of like the vibe of the song is like, we're tired, we're playing in a shitty slot. The Deftones are bleeding into our speakers. We can't hear ourselves above the feedback, and our relationship is over. So yeah, like, and that to me, that's actually, it was my attempt at a hold steady song.
Oh,
So I wanted to replicate the sort of Americana of the those like keyboards. It's very Heartbreakers. It's very kind of like E Street Band, but to me, it's a hold steady song in the best way, but very 90s too.
was the person that you wrote that song and Lucky Gift about a musician?
Yeah, but not really, like not the best. but a good guy.
Just because you were talking about breaking up between the buses, I don't know if that was
Yes.
like a actual like literal or if that.
Well, it's sort of like we never actually broke up, but that's sort of how I imagined the relationship should have broken up. Like that's sort of the feeling that I was trying to encapsulate. Also, like just the strife and exhaustion and elation of being at a rock festival and like playing. Like I was harkening back to when I was playing in at Bonnaroo when Cho Dependent came out. And so I was on all these different stages with different bands, kind of doing weird collabs. Like I collaborated with GWAR and Brendan Benson and all sorts of different people, the
So
Flaming
rad.
Lips and super like rad and super random. But it was also I was like fighting with this boyfriend at the time, and like we're like having this argument and breaking up essentially between the buses, but also running into GWAR's dressing room and getting ready to do a show with them. So, and they're all eating Altoids. GWAR eats a lot of Altoids because it's so hot inside of their costumes, which are all like silicone and rubber and
Wow.
very like they don't breathe. So they have to eat a lot of mints in order to stay cool from the inside out.
Did you do that when you were the poodle on The Masked Singer?
I must have. I should have. I was very hot in that costume. It's like really suffocating. So the only thing that you have is like a mint to keep your hopes up.
It is one of the best costumes that The Masked Singer ever had.
It's so cute. And I know that you would like it because it's a perfect Parker pink.
Yep, that's what, as you know, it's my color.
Yes.
To go continue to go track by track, and we were talking about queer voices and the political landscape at the time. More serious track would be You Can Be You. I'd love you to tell me about what inspired that song, why you felt the impetus to write it.
You Can Be You is a song that I wrote for Nex Benedict, who is a non-binary, gender non-conforming teen from Oklahoma who unfortunately was really let down by the system, by the teachers, by the staff at the school, by just the entire infrastructure there, by the government of Oklahoma. Really tragic. And they passed away. And even after their death, the press was really just so ugly with the constant misgendering, the constant like real like denigration of the idea of being different. And so I wanted to write a song for them that was really for all of these young people who identify as they them, who identify as gender nonconforming or trans or non-binary or whatever that is, to have a song for hope or my hope for them, and a statement that they can be themselves, and it's a permission to that I see them, that I want them to be happy. And so, for me, it's a really emotional song. I love writing that with Garrison because we got together on the day that Nex died, and we were like, we have to write a song about this. This is like a really important thing, and kind of putting it together just really made sense. And then in the recording, I really love bringing Jordan Katz in on the trumpet. Like I can't play horns, but I really love when I can afford them. So he came in and brought in that perfect Bell and Sebastian trumpet, which I think really underscores the emotions in it. But yeah, I love that song.
And obviously, I mean, I'm not exactly sure when exactly you wrote it, but obviously now what's going on with trans rights. I mean, it's been going on for a while, but like since then, Trump is like he's quite literally trying to make it that you can't refer to someone as they them, or that non-binary is an actual, category that you can have on your passport or whatever. So how has this song taken on more meaning or more importance to you? I don't know if you've performed it live or plan to.
Yeah, I've been performing it live a lot, and I think it's more important than ever. Trans people have always existed. That, you know, there's always been a place for trans lives, trans identity. It's just always existed. And for this administration to outlaw it really doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean anything either, because it's not gonna change the fact that they're in existence, that they're here, we're here. And so it's important to align with the trans community, to support the trans community, to listen to the trans community as much as possible. So I really love playing the song live. I really love getting to talk about it. You know, for me, it's an opportunity to establish a queer elder understanding and relationship to the younger community. So I'm glad to do that.
Is that a responsibility or a title you feel that you're a queer elder that's got to like educate the youngsters about, you know, whatever it was? A lot of kids don't realize what a big deal AIDS was
Yeah.
in the 80s and 90s, or that certain, you know, a lot. Do you feel a need to impart queer history?
Yes, I think it's really important to. I really love doing that. And I think that we need queer elder voices because there's a lot of our generation that's missing from AIDS. So we have a missing rung in the ladder that we have to span over, that there's not the sort of the immediate generation, like the one that's sort of like 10 or 12 years ahead of me are all gone, you know, and so I think it's important for queer people in my age range, you know, we're in our 50s, we want to be able to talk about the past and have sense of optimism. Like we are in a terrible time now, but we've actually been worse off before and fighting a deadly pandemic at the same time without the government's assistance, without any sort of like advancement in our rights. So we have come really far. And so to remind people of that, I think really helps.
Is that it's a story song, obviously, and I don't know if it's based on a fictional or a real person or not, but Waterside, which is about being gay in the 1950s, I guess,
Yes.
when that was, I mean, I think it might have even been considered illegal in some parts in America. I
Yes.
don't know. My history's not great, but certainly being openly gay or queer
Hmm.
in the 1950s was kind of not a thing. So tell me about that
Yes.
song.
So that song, well, it's my attempt at a jellyfish song. So I wanted it to sound like a jellyfish song,
Do you
which I
know how much
love.
I love jellyfish? They're like,
I love, yeah,
yeah, okay.
we love them. We love them so much. I love them so much. So that was my attempt at doing that. But also, so the song is about a fictionalized gay movie star, a beautiful young man is coming from England who is gay, but is in the closet and has to buy a house in Hollywood. He's trying to figure out who's going to be his beard, and he decides to marry his realtor. So that's what it's all about. He's going to buy a house in Hancock Park. He's going to marry the realtor who's going to be his beard. And so it's all about like how can we sort of deal with the fact that I'm going to have to hide my identity in the facade of this house, in the facade of this happy life, and you know, playing the character of a straight man. And so I just love Todd Haynes movies as well. So the song is really all of Todd Haynes movies wrapped into one, whether that's Carol or Far From Heaven. You know, for me, he's the ultimate like purveyor of gay longing. And so I wanted to do a song that sort of was speaking to that.
What made you want to do a song? I don't know if it was based on an amalgam, like Rock Hudson's the obvious person that
Yeah.
comes to mind, but like, what made you want to do a song, this story? How, like, were you trying to make some commentary on maybe how things, as bad as things can be, things have progressed?
Yes, they've been so much worse. And also there's just so many stories that we don't know about because we had this historical view that just does not tell the truth of everything that happened. You know, so we're not even sure like who was closeted back then. We don't know. There's so many stories like that that we'll never know. And so like my imagining of like I would love to see all of the truth come out. Maybe we'll never hear it. Well, maybe we'll never see it, but I can tell my own story.
Were you ever early in your career when you were starting off in acting, or were you ever, I don't know, I assume you weren't closeted in your like life, but like, were you ever advised not to talk about that or to keep that on the DL in
Oh,
your public?
yes. Oh, yes. Like in the early 90s, it was really like, just don't talk about it. Just don't refer to it. And like, you know, I was told by like early management, like, don't make it a part of your identity or your comedy or you're really like sort of you know dealing in euphemisms then because everybody kind of knows as well. But also being bisexual, that's another layer to it too because then you had the option of like opting out of this idea of like, oh, well, maybe it's something that it's very European. Maybe it's very like, I don't know, that
Like
you're,
David Bowie or something.
yeah, you're like a creature from another planet or something like that, you know? But yeah, the 90s, oddly, in a lot of ways, was so conservative. You know,
Mhm.
we're making a lot of strides in some areas, but then in others, really not.
Did you take that early advice at the time and not just, I guess, basically be don't ask, don't tell? Or at what
Yeah.
point did you become more open about your sexuality
I think it was
publicly?
hard. It was hard too because it was just like so much of my life is about my comedy and like vice versa. So there was no real way to kind of hide it. And, you know, I always like wanted to talk about it. I always wanted to talk about gay things. I wanted to talk about gay life. And that's something that I never really shied away from. So I think I don't even know like exactly when coming out was a thing. It's weird because when you're bisexual, like your coming out is almost like it's less of an event because
Mhm.
you're not sort of one way or the other all the way. So people don't sort of regard it. And then especially women too, our sexuality, if you're sort of in that category of being bisexual, there is an in out sort of, I don't know, that we can be. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, there's also, I mean, I'm not bisexual myself, so I'm just saying this as observing. But from what I understand, there's also sort of weird stuff. There's a sexualization, like guys thinking that if a woman is bi, it's like, yay, three ways, like,
Mm-hmm.
that sort, like, sort of making it about them. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, I got a bisexual.
Yeah.
And but then I believe there's also sort of like some people who feel like, I don't know, I'm choosing my words carefully, but that's sort of like a cop out or whatever. Like you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
choose a side, and that like if you're bi, it's just sort of like your training wheels to
Yeah.
being gay. Am I making sense?
And then there's also like a long history of people who have said that they were bisexual, but they were fucking totally gay. You know, like there's people that but said it to soften the blow of gayness.
Or maybe because they were still figuring it out.
Yeah, true. So, you know, that also is one of the misconceptions, I think, of bisexuality as well. So we're not fully accepted by either side, whether that's the mainstream heteronormative society or the gay society at large. Like you don't have full acceptance from either or. So it's a strange place to be.
Do you feel that has changed, like improved, progressed the perception of bisexuality?
I think since I think yeah, nowadays there's quite a sense of, and especially with like Gen Z who
Yeah.
really take every relationship as their sort of standalone. There's like like much of like let's each relationship sort of defines them as opposed to like let's look at the sort of collective sexuality. So that's where you have the Cara Delevingnes and you know you have this sense of like people can be fluid and also queer.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about the 90s. I do love the jellyfish reference, by the way. I've often said that if any band could reunite, I wouldn't say the Smiths or some of the other band, I would say Jellyfish.
The best.
And I don't think it's going to happen. So I appreciate you keeping the dream alive in your own music. And we talk about the 50s in terms of the subject matter of water of that song. But I got to ask about the Doot Doot cover. I got
I
to ask
love
about
it.
that
I
because
love
I
it.
understand am I pronouncing the band name right? Freur,
Freur.
which a
Yes.
lot of people don't know actually begat Underworld,
Yes.
which is pretty bringing it into the 90s. But you actually said that Doot Doot is it literally your favorite song of all time? Because you like a
It's
lot of
like
music.
it's literally my favorite song of all time. I love that song. It's often thought of as a novelty track because of the pronunciation of the name of the band, Freur. Freur, like what is that?
I thought they were
Also,
German for until the Underworld
yeah,
thing. I thought they were a German band.
yeah, totally. And then when you see if you ever like watch the music video, they look so strange. They look like um
I
clownfish.
have to
Their
go back and look at.
outfits are so They're like if you match sort of, you took Sig Six Sputnik and crossed them over with like a hazy fantasy, like it's a very glam, but there's also something organic. Like it's not out of the realm of Bjork's latest album.
You're
Like
speaking my
that,
language.
yeah, very strange, but like exotic and extinct bird song like kind of sounds. And I love how Doot Doot, the original recording, sounds so organic, but it's also all synthesizers. So they
Right.
managed to be the ghost in the machine. They are not robots anymore. They made organic, like earthy sounds come out of computers. And I love them. I think the melodically it's a genius song, and I'm so grateful that I got to do a cover of it. I just love it.
Am I correct in, did you add lyrics to it or change lyrics?
Overlay. I didn't change any lyrics, but I
Okay.
overlaid a kind of I don't know if it's I'm scatting. It's like my
Yeah.
beat poet. I was just talking to the birds outside of the window and trying to get them to move to do my bidding. But it's just a little just a little talk through to add. But I just think that's a perfect song.
It's a huge honor that you, to them, to Freur, it's hard to say Freur,
Sure.
Underworld, the dudes. It's hard to, it's definitely an honor for you to name that as your absolute favorite song because I know
Yeah.
your knowledge of music is vast,
Yes.
encyclopedic. So for you to narrow it down to that one is it a song you've wanted to cover for a long time?
Yes, and that's another one that I recorded with Roger in 2014, and actually we went back and added some a little more texture to it in 2024 to finish it to record for this record. But I yeah, absolutely love it. I've always wanted to cover it. It's just something that I just never really thought, oh, when would this make sense? But this it did here.
Awesome. There's a couple other, like a few other songs I want to talk about that are a little bit more on the serious side lyrically, and I'll pair two together, which is Melinda and Wheels of Gold, because
Oh yes.
they're both about sobriety
Mm-hmm.
or addiction. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd, love for you to open up about what inspired those songs.
Well, Wheels of Gold is just about being dope sick. I was an opiate addict for a long time, and I think that when you have that in your history, the way that the drug works in your system of when you're sick and then when you're well, it's like the difference between a major chord and a minor chord. It's like that everything is okay, everything is really not okay. And so that song to me is about being sick and getting well and being sick and getting well. And so I wrote that for the dope fiends, but I love the song. I love the texture of the recording. I love for me, it's also one of the songs that Jerry Lawler, who the album is dedicated to, who the song Baked Bread is about, she actually sang on that track as well. And so, it's great to have her voice sort of in the texture of the song. Um, you know, for me, it's she was somebody that I collaborated with for years, and so I'm really grateful to have her sort of ghost in the record. But yeah, I love that song. And then Melinda is all about recovery and being in these communities where we are in sobriety and we all come together to talk about what's going on. And all of my years in these communities is it's sort of, the song is a tribute to all these people that I've met along the way.
You've definitely been open about your sobriety, so I feel like okay asking about this, but if I'm being invasive or whatever, let me know. But you mentioned opiate addiction. I guess I never knew exactly what you were addicted to, I guess, or was it like prescription pill?
Yeah,
Opiate can mean
anything,
different things.
all anything,
Oh, okay.
whether any of that, whether that's Oxycontin to heroin. I didn't get onto fentanyl because I was just on the verge of that. I'm sort of sad I missed it, but I'm glad I don't.
I think it's good that you did.
It's a probably a good thing.
Good.
Yeah, so all of that. Like I never became a full-blown intravenous drug user just because I never actually had to resort to that. I was able to sort of get as much of whatever I could. But I look at all those drugs are really the same. Like chemically, they're the same. You break them down, but socially it's different. Like when you have sort of people who are sort of pill addicts and those who are intravenous drug users, there's sort of that divide. But to me, chemically, it's the exact same thing.
So when did you've been sober for a while, like
Yeah, almost
when
10
did
years.
and was there any kind of uh, it could be a low point or a rock bottom, or it could have been an epiphany. What made it? I don't know if you tried to get sober before, because a lot of people I've talked
Yes.
to, it didn't stick the first time, but like
Yes.
what made it stick
I
for
think
10
that
years?
it's like for me, I just reached the end. Like my addiction was so bad that there was no way up from there. Like there's no way that I could continue with it. And I realized it was just not, it's not sustainable. Like, and I think that now I experience like a kind of sobriety that requires also a lot of work to it. I have a really strong meditation practice. I have a huge community of other people who do this with me. So I'm really lucky in that regard, but I'm more involved with my sobriety than I ever have been. Also, like I'm 56, so I don't have a lot of time to mess around with it. Like if and also the drugs nowadays, you just can't do them.
I'm proud of you that you stayed sober during the pandemic. I mentioned the
Oh yeah,
pandemic because
yeah,
a lot of people didn't. Even,
yeah,
some people I know. I mean, they got back on track, but they definitely relapse, and who could, you know, totally can understand why.
yeah.
But it seems like, you have great resolve. We mentioned David Lynch and you said meditation. Do you do transcendental
I
meditation?
do a form of TM. I do the 2 20 minutes a day, but I usually stack it to do 1 40 minute in the morning.
Oh, okay.
But every once in a while, like if I have to like do it schedule wise, I'll do 2 20 minutes. But it's helpful. Like it's like really coming at it like from a practice like point of view. Like practice is like you just do it every day. Like for me, it's just made such an improvement. Like I um think people don't realize how good it is until you actually do it, but apply it to your life. And I've managed to. So that's one of the best things that I've ever done.
I just recently, I did get to interview David Lynch once over
Wow.
the phone in
Wow.
2018, and it was when he was doing his festival's disruption, which was raising money for his David Lynch Foundation. So even though I tried to pepper in questions about all the wonderful stuff he's done with his art, he really wanted to just talk about TM. And I actually just put it up the week he died. Um, and I was listening to it, and I was like, he was just so joyful talking about it,
Yeah.
like much more joyful than you would think David Lynch would be. Like you said, he was funny. That I was like, damn, should I get in on this? Would
Do
this help
it.
me
Yeah.
when the world's going to hell? Like maybe I
You
need
know,
to get in on it.
it will really help. It really helped me. And I've been doing it for quite some time. Almost my entire sobriety really helped me so much. I'm really grateful for it. Like I just 2 days ago, I got foot surgery. This is dumb, but I had to have an injection between my toes.
Ah, that sounds really,
Horrible.
yeah.
And it was the only way I got through it through oddly through meditation. Like actually like was the one thing that helped is that I was able to like go back and get into that mindset that I've been practicing every day. It really helped. So it helps in stressful situations, but also helps daily.
Is your foot all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, good. I know we're probably running out a bit of time, but that actually brings me to one other question, or a couple other songs I wanted to talk about. Stevie is about your meditation guru
Yes.
or
Yes.
leader, or I don't know if I'm using the right word. Tell me about
Yeah.
that song.
So he's my meditation teacher, and he actually moved to LA, and he had to leave behind a feral cat colony in his move. You can't take all the cats with you. You can't, and it's really just about like what I've learned from him through meditation, but also just the action of like leaving things behind, whether that's
Mm.
these sort of cats that you can't forge a relationship with, but you've had some caring for some time, and you have to sort of leave that and be in your life, and also leaving behind the shackles of existence, the shackles of the mind, things that you worry about. And so it's a song that really is about meditation at its core, but also what I've gotten from him. and the practice in general. But yeah, I love cats as well. So it's a shout out to all feral cats out there.
That's why I turned around for a minute because I did see earlier that my non-feral cat was lurking around, but she seems to have left, but she was lurking around for a minute. So I wanted to see
Oh,
she was in on the action. And then I guess I'll wrap it up with, since the record's coming out on Valentine's Day, Boyfriend from China is a unique perspective, I don't know if there's ever been a song written about specifically this topic, and I'd love, it's a very Margaret Cho song, I think. And I think
it is.
it's the last song on the album, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Fittingly tying a bow on the lucky gift. Tell me about that song.
Thank you. This song, I wrote it for when Joel Kim Booster and Bowen Yang are doing fashion shows in Shanghai for for Rick Owens, that they're going to play that track at blasting loud as they walk down the runway. And it's for like beautiful Chinese models, the beautiful models that I see on Douyin or on Red Note when we were on it for one day. But I wrote it for, like, my inspiration is when John Varvatos took over the old CBGB space
Yeah, I
in New
remember
York.
that.
And so like how like rock and fashion collide. And so yeah, it's for Asian American models and Asian models who are walking the runway in male fashion shows in China.
I liked the idea of it because, forgive me if this is like a thorny subject, to open up, but I remember reading a few years ago that like Asian men were like, at least among straight men, uh, straight interactions were like the least swiped on
Hmm.
Tinder, and there was like all these news reports that like even women who were Asian, were I'm sure you've read the reports that like
Hmm.
basically there was this kind of thing that like Asian men have trouble dating. I'm talking about in America. And, so I love a song that's kind of celebrating the beauty and desirability of these, the person of these Asian men that there
Yeah.
could be your dream boyfriend.
Yeah, the more so gorgeous that they're out of reach. Like that's what I feel like when I see some of these like Asian models, like or the K-drama heartthrobs or K-pop guys. They're so beautiful. They're out of
Mhm.
reach, but I love that about them too.
That's actually interesting. I never even thought about that. But yeah, in general, like the study I was citing was probably about at least 5 years ago, this
Hmm.
idea that like Asian men were less desired dating commodities in the app space. Do you feel that's changed? Maybe actually all the they're Korean, but like all the K-pop bands that
Yeah.
are the ultimate global heartthrobs now
Yeah.
among women and girls of all walks of life. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of a cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's really changed. I think it's really shifted the way that now Asian men's sexuality is really like adored and applauded and thirsted. We all just wanted them to thirst and they thirst. So I love that.
I love it too. And it's, like I said, the perfect ending track for this Valentine's Day release. It's a love letter to gorgeous Chinese men, and who can
Yes.
argue with that? What
Yes.
else do you have going on? I hope it won't be another 8 years before we hear another album from you, but you have a lot going on. So what else?
Yes. I'm writing. I still have like a couple of songs left over that I'm the sourdough starter for the next record. I'm doing a bunch of live performances. The next one will be with Garrison and Eric Curtis, who, Garrison I wrote a lot of the album with, and Eric Curtis, and they she produced it and he mastered it. And we're doing Largo on February 13th as a sort of you know, like record release party, and on tour still with the Live and Livid tour. So people can find all about what's happening on margaretcho.com.
Are you wanting to do like a full-on concert tour? I mean, there'd be some comedy in it, kind of like what Trixie
Yeah.
Mattel does.
Yeah.
She
I
does
would
the
love to.
songs and then she
Yeah, I would love to. I'm just trying to see like what that looks like and trying to figure it out. So yeah, but that to me would be really exciting.
it would be exciting for me. And so what this
Yeah.
whole conversation was exciting for me. So congratulations on getting this record out and everything you got going on. It was lovely as always to chat with you.
So great to see you in your pink house.
You are a unicorn to me. So
I love it.
I got it all going on. Have a
That's so cute.
wonderful, happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.